everyone, this is Caryn and Jack Daly, and we are here with another episode of Sales B12, the one dose of sales you don't want to miss. Today, we're talking about the role of sales messaging, not marketing messaging, but sales messaging in the sales process. Jack, take it away.
Hey, so it's I'm afraid I won't play a role here. And maybe that's appropriate, Caryn, because as far as I'm concerned, with decades of our relationship, you're the queen of sales messaging. That is what the door opener is all about. Your people are so expertise at this that I almost feel like just let you go for the next 5 or 10 minutes, and I'll catch you on the next session. Now, I'm not gonna completely do that. But what's the role of sales messaging in sales success? Let's hear it from your perspective.
It is foundational. When you say the right words to the right people, doors open sooner and sales close faster. And the one thing I can tell you through the 23 years I've owned this business, where we do door opening, we do executive level door opening for other companies. We get them in the door with their prospects. I can tell you that the person with the best words wins. I've seen entire deals won or lost on the basis of a single sentence sometimes. Even companies that don't necessarily deserve to win, I've seen them win because they have better words than the other companies. That's one of the reasons why we do what we do, because we want our clients to have access. Our clients deserve to win, but they can't get a seat at the table or as many seats at the table as they want. And a lot of that has to do with what is said to a prospect. There's a big blind spot out there. People think that marketing messaging is the same thing as sales messaging, and it's not. You're not talking to a persona, you're talking to a person. So the individual words really matter. And this is a very overlooked aspect of sales, which is, of course, part of the sales playbook, which is, I'm going to turn this back on you at some point with and talk about the role of this in the playbook.
Hey, Caryn, you make a great point in terms of there's a big difference between the messaging that goes on in marketing and
Yes.
the messaging in selling. You just have to remember what the two disciplines are about. The wording and the messaging in marketing has to do with keying up or teeing up an opportunity for us to talk about helping somebody. But what is it that we're going to do to take that opportunity that marketing gives to us, the salespeople, and take that customer to the finish line? Those messages are very, very different.
Right, absolutely.
So how do you create a better sales message?
So one of the ways to create a better sales message is to figure out what is the gap. We have two trademarks in sales messaging, and one of them, the most recent, is called the COP gap method of sales messaging. How do you create gap between what somebody has now and what they could have? What could their lives be like if you were part of it? And how do you create that gap with words? And so one of the frameworks we have is for the objection, I already have a vendor for that, thanks anyway. And so what do you say in that moment that helps somebody understand, here's the rest of the playing field, all your competitors, and here's you with value. And this delta here is value. How do you set that up? So there's 3 sentences. It's so simple, Jack, and it helps people to articulate this in language that's so relevant and compelling to prospects that light bulb goes off and they get it. And it's anyone can, and they fill in the blank, but not everyone can, and they fill in the blank. And then you have, for example. And so when you're speaking to different people, that gap message is going to be different because different things are important to different people. And one of the secrets to getting this right is that the second line, but not everyone can, the person who hears it has to nod along in agreement. And so I can give lots of examples of that, but that is the framework for the answer for that objection, and to help prospects understand that they need to be working with you. I call it a light bulb moment. They need to be working with you. They need to meet with you because everybody's here and you are here and you're setting that up with words. The other part of sales messaging that's really critical is being proactive as opposed to reactive with a sentence. So you can shorten your sales cycle by changing your sentence. For example, so you could say to somebody, I'll follow up with you in 3 months, or, which is very reactive, or you can say, how's Thursday at 10? Now you just shortened your sales cycle and made it easier for the decision maker to be part of the sales cycle as well. Those are just some examples. So tell me about how the sales messaging fits into the playbook. That's, I promised I was going to come back to that. Who
Sure.
develops it? How do the leaders know it's right? You can have lots of stuff in there, but how do they know it's right?
Yeah, so Caryn, an awful lot of companies in the world have something that they call either the President's Club or the Chairman's Club, where they recognize the top performing salespeople in the organization. Now, I've spoken to those groups on many, many occasions, and many of my clients have me back year after year after year. One of the most frustrating experiences for me is seeing the same people year after year after year be honored in the President's Club or Chairman's Club. Now, if you get away from the business for a moment, think about it. They're all the salespeople are dealing in the same economy, with the same product, with the same price, with the same service deliverable, and with the same competitors. And yet these few people recognized as the best are doing it year after year after year. The only way that can be true and happen is if those people are doing it differently. So the best playbooks, quite frankly, reflect the top sales performers' best practices. It's as simple as that. I have a client that I've had for 10 plus years, and every year I'm with them. And 2 years ago, there were 300 and some salespeople gathered together in New Orleans from around the US. And I asked the top 10 salespeople to get on stage with me. And I didn't know who they were at the time. And it was just an interview process in front of the 300 plus. And one of the questions I asked straight away was, how many years experience do you have in the industry, and how long have you been with this company? Three of the 10 people had no previous industry experience until they came with the client, and all three of them had less than a year with that client. And they were on stage as top 10 performers out of 300 plus. And I just said, how can this be? And they all laughed and said, when I came to the company, I felt like I cheated. All I needed to do was do what the playbook said to do. Use the words and the phrases and behave according to the playbook. Now, here's the thing that I really want to make sure everybody understands. There were people in that 300 plus audience that had worked in that company for over 10 years and in the industry for more than 15 and never had been in the top performing category. And why is that? Because they have their own style. They have their own way of doing things. I am all about best practices. And you want to get a playbook that reflects best practices? Get your top performers to go there and contribute there and make the playbook something that the salespeople produce, not the leadership produces. The best salespeople are canned. They say it the same way each time. The beauty is it doesn't sound canned. And then the last thing I'm going to give you on this section, and if you want anything more on sales messaging, you do it, Caryn, not me. But here's what I would tell you is, as much as I believe in that playbook, it is never a finished product. Right. It is always under review. It's always subject to improvement because our environment that we sell in is always under change.
So, Jack, how can the managers know with certainty that their sellers are using the playbook?
That's fair. I've heard it say this way. It's the 3 P's: practice, 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 right? So part of it is Are your salespeople, do you have allocated time in the calendar where your salespeople are literally practicing? One of my companies was number 10 on the Inc. 500. We had 120 salespeople in one location, and every salesperson of those 120, no matter how good they were a minimum of 1 hour each day of practice.
Yeah.
The very best people practice. And then the second thing is you've got to go in the field with your people and be out there coaching them in real situations.
Right.
If you really want to see what's happening, get out in the field and be there. And so I ran an organization, as you know, of 2,600 salespeople. I was on the road in the field with my salespeople 3 out of every 4 weeks every month. And Paul Orfilia, who was the founder of Kinko's Copies and built it into the giant company that it was and then sold to FedEx, he told me in an interview that I did with him that he never had an office at corporate. He spent 100% of the time in the stores because that's where you really find out what's really happening. You got to go out in the field. That's the key.
Well, it's really important that management is a big part of making sure that there is a playbook and that people use it. The creation of the playbook with the best salespeople for sure, but then people who understand what to do with those words, which aren't necessarily the marketing people because they're not the ones who use sales language. The sellers use the sales language. So as we grew our company, we found that we had to have door openers become messaging strategists because they would know this will work and that won't work. So in the creation of the sales messaging, that piece of it is very important, getting that right. And then of course, if the target changes, the messaging has to change too.
Hey, and let me add this one too. Look, an awful lot of people know who I am because I've been at the game quite a while. And I have to tell you, there are things that are going on when I'm on stage and speaking that I have been saying the same thing for over 2 decades. But every audience that I speak to, I deliver it as if it's the very first time I've ever said it. And that is the requirement to be at the top of your game. To be professional is to deliver it like it's opening night on Broadway. And that, we can give you the right messaging. We can put those sales messages in a playbook. But if you're not delivering them as if it's first time out on stage, your prospect knows it. If you're just going through the motions, it doesn't what messaging and what words, they're falling on the floor and ineffective.
Well said. Well, thank you for being with us for this episode of Sales B12. I encourage you to look at the other Sales B12 episodes as well for just as great content as this one, and we will see you next time. Thanks, Jack.